Here we go again. I forgot to unmute myself. Welcome to the LIBERcast episode 98. 98 episode of discovery, self-introspection, and growth through this year and a half, 2 years of work, hard work, and not only on the technical side, but on my own. And I want to express my gratitude to everyone who was involved, who are getting involved, the people, the comments, the question, all these incredible people that I stumble upon. Thank you so much for being part of it. You're all the pillars of the LIBERcast. This is where we're starting to build a base, a foundation, to put the world in and doing our best to bring this beautiful message to the people for a better, at least I hope, and half decent world. Because this is not only about me, it's not about Cory, it's about everyone. It's about the children, it's about the elderly people. Everyone. It's all our responsibility as people to get involved. It's not by praying or meditating that we're going to change the things. I'm already fired up. So I'm gonna bring up Cory for the third or fourth time now. Thank you for being there, brother.
Fire.
I appreciate
What's up?
it.
What's up? We're fired up.
Oh, I the conversation we had before we started. Oh my god.
Yeah, when we're not recording. Thanks, Fred. No, I was kidding. Yeah, thank you. No, I have to. I didn't get to say thank you for letting me, be a part of your platform and sharing the message and sharing it in a different language. I always have to thank you for that. Which again, I can't. I go into your live streams and then I leave immediately because I'm like, well, can't understand French. So unfortunate for that, but other than that, everybody who's on my channel who's watching this, they should definitely go over to your channel and support you. Subscribe or whatever you got to do. Subscribe, like, comment. I don't know, whatever the YouTubers who think they're all fancy normie people tell you to do. Go ahead, be a NPC and do it. No, I'm just kidding. Be better than the NPCs and support people who actually produce independent content, who actually are caring about the truth. And it looks like we already got some people coming in, which is great. Welcome to the live stream.
Yes. I mean,
I do like talking to Fred, though. I will say this, okay? I have no problem admitting to my bias. I did a video on bias like 2 years ago, whatever, on like why people should be biased because, the truth is important and what they see to be the truth. And I think Fred is a great person to talk to. I told him that he grounds me. So because I can be a little crazy and all over the place sometimes. And also I like his energy, his passion, and like strength. I like that. It's quite interesting because I'm coming from a Taoist point of view and he talks about stoicism sometimes. So it's like basically married in the same sense of philosophy toward aligning to nature and not caring about your feelings. Sorry, not caring about your beliefs, not caring about what you think reality is, caring about what reality is, period, past the beliefs, past the subjectivity and the feelings, you know? So I appreciate that. I want to say thank you. Okay, I won't interrupt you anymore.
thank you for your kind words. It's greatly appreciated, and I expanding on that. Before we're starting, I had the chance to have an opportunity to talk into a wider French audience, and make a presentation about natural law and morality and things like that in the French side. And I, I'm gonna be honest. There was a good response from the people, and I think there's an interest a growing interest into these kind of informations and doctrines that we were given with the time, and the survival of the people who had lived long enough to being able to put it on paper and do the translation and things like that. So
Yep.
it's a gratitude work for the chance that we have to be able to access this information, these crucial informations about the nature of reality and the nature of the human being. And we have to look into that. Everybody needs to. It's not like a choice. We have to do it. And the French side, we there's a lot of work to do. Like I was saying to you, I think the shell there is very thick, and the people are still very culturally inclinated. So there's
Hmm.
the programming behind
Right.
very strong. So there's work to do, but I like it.
You see, I will say, they may not be thinking so much for themselves. I think what the word that comes to mind when you speak as to individuals thinking about their nature is philosophy and philosophers. We are modern day philosophers, no doubt, for talking about universal or timeless concepts or seeking concepts past just mere human, matters, whether that's events or people. We're looking at ideas. We're looking at things that contend and create the ideas. I mean, the other ideas, the events, the people. It's the very roots, the foundation. That's what nature is to begin with. So it's quite interesting when you say that there aren't people who are thinking. They are thinking, but actually not for themselves. They're taking other people's thinking as their reality. And even if they were to think for themselves, I'm afraid they would actually end up in a similar scenario to some extent because their mind is still in the way of reality. Reality cannot be condensed into one philosophy, it cannot be condensed into one religion, it cannot be condensed into one word, right? So, this is something magnificent because there has been countless philosophies all throughout the ages that claim to be the only way, that claim to have the truth, to claim that you must obey their every word. And that sounds an awful lot like the law systems we have too, which is why you can make these connections between religion and government and philosophy and how they all
Mhm.
create each other. But they're all constructs of the mind projecting onto reality, taking from reality and projecting and saying, this is reality, and let us accept it. And to some extent, when it comes to governments, you have no choice but to accept it. And that's not real acceptance. That's not love. I would say love is something that you would like to accept, something that can care for you, that will nurture you. These systems that we have created are based on violence, they're based on dogma and divide, which
Mhm.
is why we're constantly talking about race, class, political parties, sports teams, all a matter of divide in the mind. Because way past the mind, you see everything is much more connected, interconnected. And within that connection are natural polarities that all work together, right? So this is where you have, for instance, in Taoism, that yin yang circle, which I have behind me. I don't intend to have these symbols. They come upon as gifts by other people, actually. And I accept them because they are symbolic representations, just as you have tattoos on your arm, right? That's symbolic. We have logos for our channel. We have logos in our mere words, our names. Like every letter that we use is a logo, a symbol. And so it's inescapable. Our minds projecting upon reality and taking things and turning them into different forms. But if we do not be aware of this process of us taking from nature and never giving back in a sense or never seeing where it came from, we get so lost in our own head and our own mental vision of reality that we lose sense with reality over time. So that way, even somebody who observes reality and says these people do not understand the truth, they too can be stuck in their own dogma without realizing it, just as much as the people who are following the dogma of some other individual. And so this is not to say that people should not think for themselves. It's to say that even when you do think for yourself, are you really?
Hmm.
Because the concepts and the words and the way we frame the picture going into talking to ourselves can even be biased because we don't realize it. We've been programmed, conditioned since a very young age that we can't even see past our own words. But you say, how could you possibly do that? How could you look past your own words? How could you see past what you don't see in yourselves? This seems like an abstract thing that you cannot come to terms with. This is why meditation was actually useful throughout the ages. Okay? Actually useful, not just because we want to sit down, look pretty, and pose for a picture and look like we're at peace and no, or relax our mind. It's actually about disciplining our mind. Because in the world of thought and so much thought, you need to be able to take a moment to sit down and clear your mind from all those thoughts so you can see the reality behind it. That's a matter of discipline, not a matter of I'm not going to think about anything at all and I'm just going to ignore reality, not a matter of I want to just relax. It's way more than that. It's kind of like when we're dreaming at night, we see a synopsis of our previous day and our previous lives, and it's being brought to us in a different form. Through meditation, you have these thoughts that arise in your head, and you can choose what to do with them. And when you come out of that experience, you can see so much more because you emptied your mind. Much like if you were to fast the body in health, instead of loading it with tons of food, you give it time to heal itself and steer it away from all the junk and everything that you're throwing at it, even if it's healthy food. You're still throwing food at it. If you fast it, it allows it to clear itself and get a better picture of what it is naturally. See, what it is nature. The concept of Zuran or Tsutslan in Chinese is what is the spontaneous. It's so as it is. That's literally the definition of their terminology for nature. So, being able to see what simply is, or the spontaneous, and our thoughts arise spontaneously, and nature arises spontaneously, and certainly what I'm saying right now, it's arising quite spontaneously because of the amount of philosophy and work that I've done in myself to come to understand the concepts that I'm sharing here. It is quite amazing. Because once you see the spontaneity in the universe, you aren't controlled by other people. You're controlled by nature, which nature self controls itself. So, are you really controlled when you are in the mode of which control is your natural medium, self control, nature's control? You're not controlled by man. You're not controlled by governments. You're not controlled by society, by religions, by beliefs. You're not controlled by the subjective wind because you see behind it. And so meditation allows us to discipline our mind, studying these philosophies more objectively from our own point of view
Hmm.
allows us to do the same thing. But again, in order to do that, we have to discipline our mind. So is meditation a requirement? No, but I think along the process of attaining more truth, it is very helpful, and especially like a world such as today. And I think the Western world doesn't understand the Eastern concepts that much. I think actually it would be great if every kid learned how to meditate because you see there's an epidemic of anxiety and depression in the world, especially among the youth. And it's because they're being bombarded with symbolism and images that, again, even if somebody's a truth seeker, it's a lot. It's still overwhelming. So there needs to
Yeah.
be that point of return to nature in a purely simplistic way.
This whole subject as such is we could talk about this for hours, and talking about perceptions, and most of the time it ends up in semantics. We're changing the terms, but actually we're talking the same language, as
Mhm.
such as perceptions of about one's mind. Where are you in your life in the sense of self-consciousness? And this whole work it's not easy. It's never gonna be easy
Right.
because we were raised by with negligence, and we were and grown into ignorance about these things. Our own parents and our own grandparents and siblings and relative were already the 2 feet on the religion of the state and the religion, the theological religions. So
Yes.
the freedom as such as we're talking about doesn't exist as such. It's an idea because this is not what is happening in reality. I I
Freedom
I,
is, yeah, it's given.
I mean, like I said in French yesterday, freedom is not something you ask for.
Hmm.
It's something you fight for. You take it. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. This is where most people are stuck in this dissonance, this cognitive dissonance, and even ourselves. I'm still struggling with some. I'm not. I'm far from being perfect, but I this being conscious about the relation you have with nature and the others in society is fundamental for your mental health and your health in general. I mean, you can see it. These people who are stuck into this endless pharmacy, these drugs that people are taking in to escape reality.
Yes.
We
Well,
have
that's the thing.
plenty of entertainment
Yeah.
to keep people far away from oneself. It's not like some. It's not
People
like
are
people
afraid of
don't.
meditating in the Western world. Like, they literally feel like they can't sit still for a moment and listen to their own thoughts. This is why it's disciplining the mind. It's not just merely, clearing the mind in a
Yeah,
sense. It's clearing the trash can, just like you would detoxify your liver. Okay. Our mind gets in our own way all the time, especially when we tell ourselves, well, in order to be happy, I have to go to a sports game. In order to look good, I have to wear this thing. I have to do this. I have to do that. And in order for other people to perceive of me a certain way, these are all these thoughts that we have in our head. By the way, you want to fix the link on the screen, the liberator.us. No two. Yeah. So, um, but we get in our own way all the time and we don't realize it. So, yes, it is a self work. Carl Jung said this. He said the hardest thing is simplicity, which is like an irony within itself. How could that be that the hardest thing is simplicity? It's because of the world that we created. We made it hard on ourselves. And
yeah,
as I said to you, I think people should learn meditation at a young age. It would make it easier as they get into adulthood to be able to take a step back, which I consider to be one of the core functions to when we say a return to nature. A return means you're stepping back. It means you're looking back. You're looking at the past. You're looking at all the wars in history and how it all just ended up causing more war. It didn't end up creating a better world. You look back and you see all these philosophies and all these people who were said the truth and they were ignored or they were killed. You look back, you learn so much for the future. But even then, we don't want to get stuck on the past because the words that they share that were the truth are so truthful that we apply to the present. That the present is actually validates the past. I can look at a Chinese writing from 2000 plus years ago and be like, this is perfectly applicable today. 100%. Even transcending technology, transcending science, transcending anything that we create now that we think is exceptional and superior. They figured this stuff out long ago. And I say these philosophers who simply did what I said, which is reflect with their own mind, with their own
yeah.
conscience away from society. Even then, they were talking about society becoming corrupt. 2,000 plus years ago. There were philosophers like Lao Tzu who's like, all these rules and regulations that Confucius is creating, I'm leaving China. So he straight up left. And he didn't write the Tao Te Ching. He didn't make Taoism. He was stopped by somebody who recognized him and said, "You're a philosopher. Could you write me some things?" And he's like, "All right." And so he wrote some things and he left. And then no one ever saw him again. And that turned into Taoism. It never was intended to be Taoism. You see what I mean? It was meant to just be a bunch of words on paper talking about reality. But people take it and they say, let's bring it into a religion. Let's make it into a culture. Let's make it with this. Let's add rules and rituals. Lao Tzu in the text literally argues against rules and rituals. He
Yep.
argues against the governments and the cultures and the societies and the programming.
The creeds and the cults.
Yes, and we can look at Jesus and we might say the same thing. Who's a real Christian? Who's really following Jesus's word? Who's really the real denomination of the Christian church? It's like the battle goes on endlessly among Christians, among who's the real Christian and who's actually following the faith of Jesus and his footsteps and who's going to go to hell or not and what exact rituals do you have to do? I think Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi, the Chinese philosophers, really hit it on the nail when they understood life from the holistic perspective. Because so many people are afraid of evil, they're afraid of darkness, and this is why they can't do shadow work. This is why
Hmm.
they can't discipline their mind through meditation, because they don't give themselves time. They say to themselves, "I can't meditate." They're basically saying to themselves, "I don't want to look at my shadow. I don't want to look at my evil. I don't want to face it." In meditation, yeah, you have thoughts that arise. You don't ignore them. You recognize them and then you let them pass.
Yep.
You don't ignore them though, because nature's giving you those signs for a reason. So the whole point again is to return to the still point, they called it, or the
Yep.
uncarved block.
Stillness.
Yes. So
Yes.
that way you can approach things intelligently rather than impulsively. So we talk about morality, right? We talk about conscience, and we talk about that being more important than instinct and just doing whatever feels right to you. Well, it is that very distinction between having intelligence going into something, knowing what you're doing, versus just doing it because you're told to do it or because it feels better. No, right? And you can easily see within the lines that I'm talking about the new age deceptions about meditation, where they want you to feel better, where they say you should just clear your mind, but they don't talk about the discipline involved or the hardships involved in the process. It's not easy for Lao Tzu to say, I'm going to leave China. I'm just going to abandon all of my culture. you know, it's not easy for any of these philosophers that are considered the first anarchist philosophers to really go against those systems at that time because literally no one else was doing it, at least from what we can see. We can't trace back an older philosophy than Taoism to anarchism. And for anybody who's new to those concepts, I mean, it's going to be shocking because most people never even heard of Taoism or anarchism in the sense that it's actually portrayed as in Chinese philosophy, which again relies on nature returning to a simple state of living, one in which is intelligent. Because you can have technology, you can have the material things, but you recognize that those things do not use you, you use them. Just as you aren't used by your mind, you use your mind. This is a matter of practice and mastery, which is why in the text they talk about the master or the sage. They're not talking about a master or sage in the sense of a person that rules a country or a slave master. They're talking about a master as in someone who has skill and expertise. Somebody you admire who you want to emulate their actions, which is why Lao Tzu was called the old master by people who studied his works later on. And certainly, I would consider him a master of teachings. Absolutely. I have to give him credit. I don't look at just the person, though. I don't just look at the ideology. I look at the ideas. I look at the philosophy, what he wrote. There's a lot of things I can look at George Washington or the founding fathers wrote, and I agree with. I don't agree with what they did or who they are. And we can barely know what someone does thousands and thousands of years ago. So I'm really just looking at what they're writing and what they're saying. And I'm saying, hey, this stuff is really true, very powerful. And how do I know it's true? How do I know it's true? This is the key because Shuangzi is very good at being able to decipher mental blockades in his writings. And again, most people in the West have never even heard of his writings. He constantly goes over the different polarities in life, including right and wrong, and saying that morality is a construct. But he's not saying, while saying that people should be more relativists. And if people understand what I mean when I just said those those three sentences or so, then they understand the bigger picture. Because there isn't a moral fabric in nature. There isn't a right and wrong in nature. The moral fabric is nature itself. Because you can look at Taoist writings and you can say there is no morality, there's no right and wrong, but they do want to harmonize to nature. Is that not a moral standard? See, people cannot see the bigger picture, which is why I created naturosophy and equated what is right
Mhm.
and what is good to what is natural and what is healthy directly so, because people are looking at these as separate concepts. The same way in the Western world that we take humans and we separate them from nature. They're part of nature. They're not separate from nature. They're part of it. And therefore, all the operations that go on in nature, the spontaneity of everything arising on its own, with basically no effort, no planning, no thinking, we can be a part of that. We don't have to think through all our decisions and be super wise and clever, because it actually can backfire. In the same way, we shouldn't just act impulsively, thinking we should not think at all and not use our minds that we're clearly given by nature to use. See, it's a hard thing for people to wrap around, because they think, well, it's got to be one or the other. It's either I do it because, it feels right, or I do it because it's really analytically thought out and logical. But they don't see that there's something way beyond that. It involves synchronicity and spontaneity that the Taoists are talking about, which is Wu Wei. Wu Wei is the core concept in Taoism, and that is considered effortless effort, uh, in non-action, but it's still action. It's non-action. It's still effort. It's effortless effort. It's mastery in the sense that, let's say you have a master in his craft, maybe a blacksmith, maybe a woodworker or whatever. It could be somebody riding a bicycle. You're learning how to ride a bicycle. You're learning how to cook. Over time, you master that skill. It becomes effortless. You don't even have to think about it anymore. This is the goal for humankind, is to master their universe in such a way that they don't even have to think about it anymore, because they're one with their reality. They're one with their practice. And so this is what the Taoists were aiming at with being one with nature. If you're going to master it, you have to be one with it completely, and therefore cast away the subjective mind, constantly attaching labels and
Yes.
different things to everything. So right and wrong is a label, and people can get stuck on it, and people will not see past it if they do not come from this holistic perspective of recognizing you can't learn right without wrong, and you wouldn't have a concept of right without wrong. You wouldn't have light without darkness. You wouldn't have darkness without light. So how could we just say one is good and one is evil, and let's bash just one away? We should not have evil. The minute you say we should not have evil, you're actually inviting more evil, because it goes against the spontaneity and order of the universe, which evil is part of that process. It doesn't need to be seen as evil. As, let's say, we are to learn to bicycle and we fall once in a while, and we end up, cooking, and we're burning our hands. We're gonna make mistakes. There's gonna be problems. But are we going to dwell on the problem and say that's a problem, or is it something that actually allows us to gain more mastery in our skill to do better than we ever had before? So this trial that humanity is going through with all the governments and systems they're creating, it's a experimentation that humans have created for themselves. And now, if they want to learn from their experimentation, they'll realize how far they've messed up. And we don't have to see this as a problem. We can see this as a stepping stone and move forward in our evolution. But the more we focus on problems, the more we focus on solutions, the more our subjective mind gets in the way, and we're never going to actually get aligned to nature, which is past all our minds and our mindsets getting in the way of everything all the time. We're so stuck in here. I'm so stuck in here. I really am. The reason why I found so much value too in Taoism is because for the longest time I was raised in the Western world with no relation or concept to the Eastern philosophy and their mindset at all. And I am very prone to overthinking, which is why I go into rants like this all the time on interviews. And you go back years past, it's even worse. And my thoughts are even more uncollected. And that's okay. I don't say that as a bad thing. I think, hey, I still stand true for the words that I said then. But I recognize that my mind, as Epictetus and the Stoics would say, is your predicament. It's your tool. It's your weapon. Your mind is so powerful, right? But it's also the greatest enemy because of it. It's your greatest tool and your greatest enemy. And me overthinking definitely was helped through meditation practices and calming my mind. And then it allowed me to see so much more, which is how I ended up creating in the first place. I recognized, how did I get to all the ideas that I had in the first place? It was because I started out as a child, willing to learn from the universe, being open and curious. That's what got me to where I am. Now, most people grow up as a child and they stick with their child concepts and they attach to them. And then as they get older, they attach to the adult concepts. And then as they get older and older, they keep attaching themselves to more concepts. They're so alienated from nature, they don't know what it is. Right?
Um, I want to bring up something. You talk about right and wrong, and good and evil. But essentially, what you were saying is you were saying or not saying it was causality.
Causality.
Yeah, cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Yeah,
this is. I mean, it's pretty simple for the people who know what cause and effect is.
I agree.
This is what Corey was actually talking about. If I'm not wrong,
No, you're right.
you were describing this law of universe.
Yes. And it has no definition. It happens.
Yeah.
And it happens. So spontaneity, and if anybody understands spontaneity, going back to my other term, Zoran, self, what is, things just happen on their own, and things are going to happen, cause and effect. Yes, there's going to be occurrences. You can call them problems, you can call them benefits, but they're just happenings. They're just occurrences, right? We have to recognize that it's our mind that turns them into something more than it is. That's how we recognize our power. And so, yes, I agree with you. And I would actually even go further as to say that defining morality is a problem because it attaches more labels to the scenario. Because let's say we look at the golden rule or cause and effect. It's a rule, it's a law that applies. It's not a definition. But if we were to apply morality under a definitive sense and say it's what doesn't cause harm, it doesn't cause a victim or whatever, while most people can agree with this, and even the ancients have all basically shared similar messages, the golden rule is way more applicable because it doesn't rely on a definition. There
Hmm.
isn't a set morality. It's just saying that whatever you think, don't impose it on me.
Yep.
And so it's even more open than defining morality, and yet it still is morality. If people do not see these ironies, they will never see the bigger picture. And I think me explaining it is not enough, because my book, Sapientia Naturae, was never to introduce knowledge. It doesn't even introduce anything new. As you know, everything, there's nothing new under the sun. But it doesn't even introduce knowledge, it introduces perspective. And the perspective you take to absorb more knowledge for yourself, because I do wholeheartedly consider everybody to be a philosopher, not one person. It's not just Jesus who's the only philosopher and therefore you must follow his every word. No, you're a philosopher too, just among him, in his world, which he created in his image. You very much can embody nature or truth or Jesus within yourself, which is why David Icke went on TV in the 70s and said, "I'm the son of God." Which is why Alan Watts went on TV and said, "We're all sons of God." And it's basically, and a lot of people did not like hearing that because it was triggering to their Christian faith of like, how could you say that? You know, because these are individuals who call themselves spiritual but not religious. They don't follow religions, and people don't like that because they want to be stuck into a box. They want to be stuck in a box. And I know I sent you a couple clips I wanted you to play before the show. I don't know if you want to show them, but Alan Watts said, he said, we're always playing in boxes. Everything we do is a box. We even watch television. We're literally staring at a box. I'm looking at a computer. This thing is a box, like we're creating boxes for ourselves, not just mentally and symbolically, but literally physically. And if we look at the circle and the archetype of a circle, it doesn't have rough edges. It doesn't have sharp edges. That represents truth and creation, the whole. It cannot be determined. It cannot be subjectively projected into the universe. Truth simply is. And therefore, getting past ourselves, we can find the truth because we're the ones getting in our own way with our own mind. So you'll see this as a common trend among Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism, or even Confucianism or any philosophy from the East. They all talk about how our mind is basically our own enemy. And Taoists are a little bit different on the sense of saying, well, it's still part of nature. So it's not something we should fear, not something we should try to escape. Because Buddhists will say, well, because life is suffering, we have to escape life. We have to go to nirvana. We need to just meditate and attain enlightenment. The Taoists wouldn't say that. They wouldn't say, let's shave our head and wear an orange robe. They're going to say, well, you can still meditate, but don't be attached to the idea of meditating. Don't be attached to the idea that life is suffering, because if you look at life as suffering, it will be suffering. You're creating a mirror for yourself.
Yep.
But see, even Buddhists don't know that about their own religion because they're stuck in it. And that's okay. Because again, most people who follow religions, they're born into it, or they have a family that gets them into it. So they feel like they're contractually obligated to stay in it, much like how a lot of individuals can be in a relationship nowadays. And I'm a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm this or that. And it preconceives obligation in individuals. They feel so stuck. Just as an individual goes and I'm going to fight for the army, I'm going to be a policeman, and then they're in that scenario and they don't know how to get out. Now, they absolutely can get out, but because they can't clear their mind and see the underlying reality, they're stuck in that reality because they're like, this is necessary. What am I going to do without it? There's no option of returning to nature for them because they never set their mind to it in the first place.
I mean,
know that what we set our minds to will ultimately determine our reality.
how much group, how much organization, how much clubs, how much creeds are heating and drinking from these doctrines and using it for their own power, for their own intent.
That's
I mean,
big.
it's everywhere.
It's called essentialization.
Yeah.
People want to know what is the root to why religion is divisive. It's called essentialization. People presume to be the expert on a subject. I'm not presuming to be an expert on Taoism, and no one's an expert on natural law. But many people will want to say they are after they study it, after they study different concepts, and they say, well, no one else is studying it and no one else sees this powerful picture. And it can be certainly powerful, but because they presume that they know it, all their wisdom, all their further learning is now halted. And so they end up creating for themselves a mental picture of reality, even though they had good intent going in. And so this is definitely what we're dealing with in today's world, is many people projecting. And that's why the shadow work is seeing, quite literally, the shadow that we're projecting on the ground. And we don't see it unless we literally take a moment and see our own shadow, right? And sometimes it's behind us. How are we going to see it if it's behind us, right? We have to ask ourselves this question. If the truth and everything is all around us and we're surrounded by it, but we don't see all of it, we only see certain parts of it, how are we going to see it? These are questions I would rather keep open because I want people to decide for themselves. Am I supposed to tell you all the answers? If somebody asks me a question on this live stream, and some people do, they say, Cory, what's your opinion on this? I don't want to give my opinion. Like, why are you asking for my opinion? I get it. You think I have good perspective on different things. That's all I can provide to you is perspective, but I cannot provide you with wisdom. I can't provide you with your own practice or enlightenment. This is something that you have to do for yourself.
Yep.
I talked about recently in my recent video why the concept of God is against the concept of the state. And Carl Jung talks about how God is this individual experience that can't be described with rational facts and logic. And so it sort of ties in as well, because many people in the scientific atheist mindset are also stuck in their own heads all the time. And they're taking the words of scientists as fact. And a lot of it you can't prove on your own. And if you do prove, okay, great. I love science. Science is what allows us to have all this stuff like equations and being able to map out different things. But you know what? It too is limited. And it too will not help us see the whole of reality. And so this is an issue, right? Just as much as the religions. And I love science. I love religions because of what they have within it, the truth that is there within. But when people attach themselves to those things,
Yeah.
I am a scientist. I follow science. I am this. I am that. It tarnishes what it actually is, which is showing us so much more. And oftentimes they're just pointing different directions, and they're for you to go upon your own path. So, but people take it as fact. They take it as this is where I must look and I shouldn't look anywhere else. And they take what they want out of different things, right? So, for instance, you said there's leaders in the world who they take philosophies and they use it to control people.
Yep.
Well, it's not that the philosophy is evil. It's just a
No.
philosophy. It's just a bunch of words on
Mhm.
paper. As I said, they took it and they just took whatever they thought sounded good and
Yep.
then put it in their own narrative in their own subjective way, which therefore makes every philosophy somewhat beneficial and truthful. It just makes it dangerous when individuals now project and cast their subjective whim on that philosophy. Because again, philosophy is all determining truth and seeing these universal concepts. So the minute a man, which is not universal or timeless, comes in and takes that and puts it down and says, this is the word of law, this is what must be obeyed, they're making it in such a finite, limited way. They're putting a box in a circle and it doesn't fulfill the circle. You can't put a box on nature. Again, nature, this whole
Mhm.
all the creation doesn't have these rough edges. It doesn't have one way to perceive things. This is why people are divided all the time. This is why people can't decide and make up their minds on religion, because there isn't one way to interpret the world. There isn't supposed to be. There isn't supposed to be a right religion, a right philosophy. There isn't supposed to be a right definition. The people that want to really get clear on morality, they fall into the same trap of needing to make a definition. You don't need to. If the answers are already within nature and already present, then there's more room for letting go than there is trying to put a nail on the coffin and say, this is what it is.
Yep.
Letting go, knowing where you're letting go. Are you letting go into the man-made systems that want to control you, or are you letting go into nature, which is open, welcome all the time, open arms, literally always there for you? And we just ignore it because we're so wrapped in our material things and the advertisements that we can't see, again, past our own mind, when we can use these things as some of the greatest tools. But instead, like Ralph Waldo Emerson said too, we become the tools of our tools. So transcendentalists, they understood it too. That wasn't so long ago. That was only 200 years ago. Abolitionists, transcendentalists, they were one and the same as well. And it's funny because they had similar themes. A lot of the abolitionists were religious, Christians, Christian anarchists, you might want to call. And they used the religion to argue against slavery. Well, how many people were using religion to argue for slavery? It's like, how many people were arguing pro Constitution versus anti Constitution? That wasn't what mattered. That's not what actually won the conversation. The abolitionists won their cause because of the truth that was behind it all anyways, which is why Lysander Spooner saw through it. He was a deist. He wasn't a Christian. He saw through the Bible. He's like, we should not rely on the Bible. We can understand natural law. It's beyond the Bible. That's what Lysander Spooner talked about.
Mhm.
A lot of people know he talks about natural law or voluntarism. They don't know that he actually protested against religion as well. So he really was, the outcast of the outcasts. Something I would probably do. Let's be honest. But it's not intentional. See, it's spontaneous. I knew that I haven't done an interview in a while or anything like this, Fred. So when I came into this, I had a billion thoughts going. I had to do like some breathing because it's been a long time. I've gathered so many thoughts and so many revelations about society and how things have operated, that to try to bring it to the public, even as much as I do through my content, it's still not enough.
Hmm.
It never will be. But to say that I will never be enough in my content, I will have a forever discontent. There has to be a time where we are content with ourselves and our work. Otherwise, we can't continue, and we're going to be beating ourselves on the head, and then we'll never be able to share the truth with others. And it should be simple. It should not be complex. And we should not be dividing people more than we already are. So I do think Taoism will help a lot of people with that, because the minute you say things must be defined a certain way and must be looked at a certain way, you can draw people more away than
Oh
toward the
yes.
truth.
Oh yes. Many examples of that.
And that is in our own community. But
Yeah.
again, and I'm not pinpointing, I'm saying in general, this happens in any community. It's something to be aware of, because if no one's going to say it, who will? And that's why I'm saying it. You have to be self-aware, because if we're going to improve on ourselves and on the message, we have to criticize ourselves
Yep.
constantly, even when we think we have it all figured out.
I mean, isn't it shadow working, introspection?
Mhm.
I I don't
It
I
is.
want to add a little bit on what you said about seeing things objectively, and this is how I say it. Is having the feet rooted to the ground, but the eyes on the meta and the stars, and it's very 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 crucial and important that people stay rooted into our shared reality.
Mhm.
Because even if you're into a cult, a religion, or an organization or a club or something, you're still into this world. Even if in your head your perception are changing, reality is still is.
Yeah.
There still is factors and context and environmental context that makes it a very relative when it comes to mind expanding experiences. Not much people have this chance to have this information and having the time to do it. Well, essentially, I don't see it as
They
as
don't need
a
to.
justification. I don't see I don't have the time as a justification for not doing it.
See,
I
Fred, I'm sorry, but what I'm trying to say is that people don't need to actually have that information, because the information we're trying to point people toward is the truth. And if the truth is all around them, then there is no information. I know this is ironic, but this is what I'm saying. The emptiness, the nothingness is where the truth is, because it is nature. It's beyond thing, no thing, no material thing. So that's where I'm getting at. Now, I agree with you. There is information such as this perspective that we're sharing that people aren't aware of. But am I going to call that information? I feel like it isn't. Now, maybe it is. I don't know. That's semantics. But it's, I think, something way more than that, because it's not like we're teaching anybody anything. As we said, nothing new is under the sun. It's really just a realization. It's just like that channel, our friend Realization. His name is Realization, using your real eyes. It's symbolic, because that's all we're doing, is recognizing to be who we're meant to be, or do what we're supposed to do, like just embody who we are. That's the uncarved block, the block of wood before it's turned into something else. So that's getting past like all the programming, all the conditioning of all our years of our life, from
Yeah.
the media, from the schools.
the let me be honest with you. I I I I tend to be a more bold, unapologetic person in life.
I love it. That's why I talk to you.
I understand things, and these things that I understood are informations that I have been blessed to stumble upon.
Mm.
And I'm living proof that this information can be life changing for many things. Yes, sure. It's not only the information, I did it. I did better for myself. But the information has been a big part of it. The access that that I had the chance to stumble upon philosophy and psychology and the occult and things like that. And I that's why I'm a loner in this side. This is my experience. This is my work, and we bring some colors to this information, and we change it. Our perceptions and our experience are coloring it up.
Mhm.
We're bringing experience to it. So I would respectfully disagree with you on nothingness and stillness. I think what you're talking about is the breathing thing
Hmm?
between and breathing in and bringing it out. There's a stillness there
Hmm.
between the two. There's a moment that there's a stillness, and this is the now. This is why so much people in the spiritual community and the occult community is living in the now, because there's only that exists, really. The future didn't happen, the
Yes.
past is gone,
Mhm.
and now it's what are you doing with your now, your
Yes.
own life, your possibility.
Yeah.
I don't disagree all of your things there, but this is why I always try to be objective with the experience that I have, and
Sure.
being very honest with it.
Sure.
We're not even scratching the surface at this point.
Mhm.
The how can I say that? I see natural law as a basic, as a foundation. So this is I align myself with these principles. It's not easy. You're not always 100% in the middle. There's variation there. There's factors, there's things that happen, and we are still having these instinct needs. We are confronted with a population and a civilization of deceiving and lies and suffering, and we still have to confront this. This is not nothing. This is something that it's real.
Yes. Well,
Suffering is real.
that's the problem, is that it is something. Not but there's always gonna be something. The point is what I'm saying is that you can't
Yeah.
have something without nothing. Like, so that's I just to clarify, like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that we just have nothing. It's
Yeah.
like saying that you just have something. You can't have one without the other. It's like wrong or right or any other polarity. So, I'm not secluded to that. I just want to make that clear. Like,
Mhm.
when I say nothing, I meant no thing, the material things you're still going to create, you're still going to embark in those. It's about seeing beyond it to see the whole. Again,
Yeah.
are those material things using us or not? And are we using them? And again, technology can be used as a tool, and what we do can be used in any which way so we choose. So this makes us dangerous and equally as so more powerful and healing. So um, there's ironies in everything. So if
Yeah.
you disagree with me, I'm like, awesome. You see the polarity. Let's go. Because people need to see the opposite of everything I say in order to see the bigger picture. That's the truth.
Mhm.
It's really crazy because how many people are going to say, go like, they're going to go up on stage or some speaker and they're going to be like, disagree with me in everything I say. So that way you can see the other side of what I'm saying. No. because they have an agenda and they want you to do certain things. I don't have an agenda. I don't want you to do certain things. So I want you to see everything the opposite of what I'm saying. Absolutely. Now, when I talk about government, you say, well, aren't you being absolute? Aren't you saying for us what to do? I'm saying, no, government is telling you what to do.
Yep.
And that's why being an anarchist is literally just being a natural human being who's literally just living their life. So you can put a title on it, you can put an ideology. Guess what? Now you're making anarchism dangerous, then it has to be. Or you can just be a living human being naturally. Now, is there conversion to be done? Because that's what it sounds like when people say, we need to go fight these people, we need to go change their minds. There isn't religious conversion. Religious conversion and political conversion goes against nature as well. Because you're telling people how to think, what to do with their own life, what to do with their own thinking. And this is why I stay away from definitions and why I haven't been teaching Mark Passio's natural law or other concepts that are so restrained and defined, and
Hmm.
why I don't call myself a Taoist. I don't call myself a Buddhist. I don't say this is who I am. I literally have always put in my bio for all of my channels, no title, because I don't want to have a title. I don't want to be seen as an expert. I don't want to be seen as an author. I don't even mention I wrote books because I don't care what people think about me. If they, oh, wow, I wrote a book, whoopee. Yes, it's a great deal of effort that I put into it all day, all night, a lot of effort. But you know what? I put that effort in because it's spontaneous and it happens on its own. It's not actually because I really worked hard and made sure it happens. No, you want to know where my source of creativity is, where my source of work is? It is in nothingness. It is in seeing past everything that is something, because otherwise you can't create something new. You can't see outside the box that you're in unless
Hmm.
you get out of it, which requires getting out of that something and into nothing. Just as much as you would say yang to yin, right? Because we are in a very yang based world. Mark Passio even says that we're in a left brain dominant world.
Yes.
There's egos, there's people saying that we need to do things. And so, what is the opposite to that? The yin right brain. Not that we fall to that extreme, but we recognize its place. The Taoists are great because they see both. They aren't just attached to the yin, which a lot of religions might say, like again, Buddhism, just meditate and reach nirvana, or Christianity, just follow Jesus and you'll be fine. Taoists are saying there's still work involved. But you know what? That work should be effortless if you're going to attain mastery. And it should be done with nature, which you can attain and you are part of already. There's no need for ritual or conversion or for doing certain things. So their approach just so happens to be aligned to a lot of the teachings of Mark Passio. But not a lot of people in this community know about it. Their teachings happen to be just universally and timelessly present, that they're growing in the world just as much as Stoicism, because people are recognizing we need to align to nature and see past our own mind. And that's it. Stoicism, right? Is like master your mind. Don't let the world affect you. You are in control of your own life. The same message as Taoism is saying, like you need to become a master, a sage. And that means being able to transcend past all the polarities and all the divisions and see and say, I'm not going to be a part of that. That's a really strong position. Stoic. I'm not going to be affected. I'm going to be who I am. And I don't care what anyone thinks, right? That's why I love it when you come to me with your strong energy. When you say there's a disagreement, I love that because it's like that's the humanity I'm looking for. Somebody who would agree with me all day would not be expressing their humanity or thinking for themselves. There's a reason why I talk to you, man.
I mean, stoicism is something that came naturally to me
Yeah,
through
same.
through shadow work. I have this zone that I'm staying in all the time. When I need to have my emotions, I'm living my emotion, but I'm letting them through me.
Right.
And it's like a river. You have your emotions, you live them, you enjoy or not, you have to take it, and then afterward I'm getting back to this neutral, not quite emotionless, but I have this control now that it's priceless. Having the being able to self introspect in real time. What is your reaction to the external world? and the words that you heard, because this is essentially I discovered that our only freedom is to choose how can we react to the external world. I mean, we're still
Yeah.
in this dangerous environment. You know, we can die at any moment. You know, we're living day by day. You know, and all these and there's a lot of factor who keeps humans out from this stillness that you call this nothingness. I understand now what you're saying, and this is, and I can tell you that I understand you because I live it. I live it, and but I didn't have quite the word to explain it.
Me neither.
This is a strong feeling without being nothing. Right? I mean, this is what stoicism is about. Is for me.
Right.
It's something that you live, and then you get back to this zone of how do you call that, a quiet
Hmm.
quiet stance on your emotion and your stress and all these things. And I'm not perfect. It's not perfect. I can, it can wavers from time to time, but essentially what it means is that you're able to use your thoughts in real time, your
Hmm.
introspection. And this is why I tend to stay far from collectivism
Absolutely.
and things like that. And I see it everywhere, in every
Yes.
communities, spiritual, occult, scientific, atheist. It's everywhere.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a universal schism that everyone shares. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in order to talk about collectivism, we are making collective statements, but that it's just part of the irony,
Yeah.
which is why I sometimes don't like to play the game. And I think I can go into the differences between Stoicism and Taoism, although they're so minuscule. I will say that what you said, like the river's motion. I know that you've never looked into Taoism, but it's quite significant because it is literally a quote. It says, "Hey, the Tao is like water, and you have to be able to flow past any hurdles if need be, and take the form of anything in order to truly encompass it,
Yeah.
in order to overcome it. Because water is actually the strongest force, but like yet it's also the weakest, and so it represents the Tao in every way possible. It also seeks the lowest position. So as opposed to the Stoics, a lot of them were rulers or people who actually like wanted power in the world. Some of them were not. Some of them were like people who were like you and I, who were philosophers who like stayed away from that. But some of them, like Marcus Aurelius, was like a ruler, and his book, the Meditations, came to light. So a lot of their positions tend to be very like strength yang based worldviews, although it still aligns to nature in the sense of those yang worldviews are still act when necessary. Still, yes, you can't change the circumstance of your reality, but you can change your response. And you don't have to be reactive, but you can choose your
Sure.
response.
Yeah.
And so the Taoists were saying the same thing, but a big distinction is that they had humility in their sense of saying, well, hey, this is why we should not rule over other people. This is so that's why they were considered the first anarchist like philosophy, and why Stoicism is not so much associated with anarchism is because they made it pretty clear. They're like, if everybody followed the Tao, we would not need government. I mean, that's literally a quote in the Tao Te Ching. So, and then they had even more quotes that were very specific, like there is no need for governing if people follow their own hearts, if they follow their own conscience, if they follow the Tao. Like they say this many different times in different instances. So this is quite significant because even when there's other quotes in the text that say, hey, well, if a ruler is a good ruler, they don't seem to exist. It kind of seems like they're legitimizing a ruler, but at the same time, they're not. And then you look at this other quote and it's like, it doesn't need to exist. It's like, wow, that's pretty darn clear. I don't know. That sounds pretty clear to me, especially before they came up with the concept of anarchism, which, came way, way later on, 1800s, and Emma Goldman and others. So they came right after the abolitionists. Like the abolitionists were considered like the first anarchist word per word, but these concepts are new. I don't expect them to reach humanity right away, but they are growing fast. So I don't worry too much about it, but I do what I can in my own life. If I worry, I just get in my own way. So what's the point of worrying, right? So I do have a rather humility point of view coming from helping people and wanting to nurture them, and also being that I'm a health coach. I have to like work with where a patient is at if I'm going to help with their health. Like I can't be, you need to be fixing your health. Like that's not going to actually fix their health, right? I have to work with them. So as much as I may want them to be healthier, because it's better for everybody if they're healthier. Their mind works better, and I can make all these justifications and say, well, if they're healthier, the world will work better. I have to work with where they're at. I have to work from that and make it better. So that's a matter of listening and understanding, which is why all governments are always causing so many problems by introducing laws, is because they don't even understand the people that they rule. And the people who are being ruled don't even understand the people that are ruling over them. It's like strangers, handling other strangers. It's like, of course, you're going to get a strange outcome. And it's like, it's common sense when you really see it from the big perspective. It's like, it's just basic common sense. Like, why are we opposed to nature's authority? Why is not nature our authority? Why is man our authority? It sounds like such a basic reductionist idea of like, well, it's very simplistic. Cory, you must be wrong because it's too simplistic. I get that sometimes. Some people will come and say, your worldview is too simplistic. And I'm like, isn't that something? Because what is the right worldview then that I'm supposed to have? They don't tell me. They just attack mine. And that tells me a little bit about their character, because ego will always have us compare ourselves to other individuals. And that also tells me about their mental projection. So I don't compare myself. I don't attack a lot of people, and I have to be careful. And yes, we all are prone to collectivist ideas and notions. And it's all about being self aware. And then I think we can all attain the truth, even if it is in our own lives. That's okay, because it will help us in our efforts for other people's lives. So we
Hmm.
do have to consider ourselves. We can't just be complaining about others. It's required.
Oh, yes. And that's the hard thing there. This is the
Mhm.
work that people are fucking terrified of.
Yeah.
Looking yourself in the mirror and confronting yourself. So I'm gonna try. We're gonna try.
Do you know who Alan Watts is?
Yeah, sure.
You do?
Not deeply, but
Mm.
I've seen his work.
Yeah, I would say he's definitely one of the greatest philosophers in the 20th century, alongside Manly P. Hall, Terence McKenna,
Hmm.
and David Icke. I mean, a lot of the people nowadays, I consider, like I said, philosophers. I consider this guy as well. I think he was magnificent in his understanding of the universe. And again, seeing past agendas. This guy doesn't have an agenda. He's helping you see past your own mind. He's helping you. He's not telling you what to think. It's how to think, right? The trivia method. So I love Mark and his work. I'm never going to abandon his work. I'm going to pinpoint and say, hey, there's definitions, there's some dogma here, there's some
Yes.
subjectivity, but that's in all of our works. I can go back to my own stuff and be like, bro, what are you doing here? Like I can, if I want to. But the point is that we move on and we become more self-aware over time, which, like you said, is a very difficult thing to do. So,
Hmm.
all right, let's check it out.
Is there any sound?
Not on my end.
Hmm.
To play on YouTube then, or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm supposed to be able to put the sound. I'm gonna look into it and put it aside for a moment.
Okay. Yeah, all good.
So between all these things, and I appreciated all the things that you said. I like to be in presence of other strong-minded people, and sharing our opinions, and not getting enthralled into emotional responses, and being very stoic about it, and discussing ideas. And this is where I want to invite people to do the same. and not being afraid of being caught into arguments and debates. It's healthy to have this conversation, and this is what philosophers used to do in the ancient world. They were discussing together, sharing ideas, opinions, and they were growing this way. And this is what we have to do as people. We need to we have the technology to communicate to the end of the other side of the planet, but we can still cannot really have a hard minded communication, hard related communication. It's very hard to connect with the people in an empathic way, and like I say every time that I'm doing and presenting this information, just don't believe me and do your own research, do your own thing. This is what worked for me for now, and I'm still gonna do it because I think it's the right thing to do. Bringing open, giving people a key or showing them a door, metaphorically talking, and there's more. You pass that door and there's way more that you thought it was. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm very very honest with that, and I'm mentioning it all the time. To bring back people to themselves. What do you understand from what I shared, what I told to people, and people do whatever they want with it. I don't care really much about this, what people think. But having this conversation all the time, and I would like to see that on the One Great Work. I would like to see that on the spiritual communities, but it's a closed and enclosed and gate kept thing. We're still not there. We're still not quite there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's okay. And
Right.
we are all growing up. We are all living this great this great work that we are sharing and living. And what I would like to see is people working on the same page, not only a little bunch here and there, little tribes, little clubs. you know I would like to see it like way way bigger than that. It's still not enough to just do conferences,
Yeah.
because it still is stuck into this echo chamber. I mentioned it a lot. When you are in this kind of stuff, for myself, and I talk from my experience, I I'm searching for this. I'm searching for not confrontation, but just arguing and debating about ideas. Because essentially, people will group together and patting in the shoulder. Oh, you did a great job. And there's a lot of
Yeah, I can't
shoulder.
stand that. When people boost my ego, I'm like, stop it. Like it's serious. Like they don't get it. I'm like, stop, because that's not how I improve. Like I
Yeah,
get it. Like you want to give some gratification to somebody. Like I say, these are great philosophers. They're dead. But anyways, but seriously, like I can get some gratification, sure. Like Fred, I gave you some compliments in the beginning, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, you guys, you gotta like Fred is the best man, and he's doing all this. Like, no, this is no point. Like we all got to work on ourselves, and we can't just like put some person on a pedestal, right? I mean, look how many times we've done that throughout history, and look how it worked out.
yeah, yeah. Fucked up every time.
Yeah, because we did it. That's why. Not because there wasn't a reason to put him on a pedestal. Not because people did not believe they were saying was true or whatever. Didn't matter. They could have been saying the whole truth. It's just simply because they weren't thinking for themselves. That's it. Because nature intends for you to be you, intends for people to live their lives, not for people to try to inhibit other people's lives and try to live out falsities, false realities, illusions, right? And so when we pat each other on the back and we stay in our echo chambers, yeah, that's all we see. We can't see outside of it. So then I say, no wonder these people who are order followers can't see past their mindset.
Yeah.
As I said before, I don't blame them because that's all they see. They haven't seen outside of it, which is why meditation and Taoist practices, as like getting back to the still point or the uncarved block, can be essential because now you're saying, wow, this is what I really am. I'm not this thing, this image, this identity that was put upon me. I'm much more than that. And that goes for anything,
Yeah.
so you can, because you can go from one medium, you can be an order follower, find Mark Passio. Wow, I found the truth. This is awesome. Now I'm teaching natural law, but even more than that is, have you still found yourself? you
Yeah.
know, like that is undescribable. It doesn't have a word. We talked about that. There isn't a term to describe it.
It's
Everybody's trying to find a
priceless.
term. I mean, at least they're trying. But let me give a quote. One of my best, my favorite quotes from the Tao Te Ching. It says, "With desire, you see only the manifestations. Desireless, you see the mystery." So you have desire, great. You get to see knowledge, you desire more knowledge, you seek more information, great. You get to learn new things. But what about desireless, where you start to see past it and you see even more? That's the point, that bridge I'm trying to gap within this community. And again, I've done it sort of effortlessly within my life as I realize it's what allowed me to be creative in the first place. So when you talk about solutions and you're like, we need to do something new, or there needs to be something that arises in the truth movement, we need to get past our own barriers and saying we have to do things a certain way and seek out new solutions. That's why I create a new platform. That's why I'm creating a game
Yeah.
show. Little spoiler, making a game show because it hasn't been done. I'm creating books that haven't been created before, and I'm doing new things. As Mark Passio brings a new idea into the public, everybody's like latching onto it and they're like, wow, this is so amazing. If we keep introducing new ideas in different perspectives,
Yeah.
all leading to the same truth, then more people are going to be appealed to it. But also, you get to express yourself rather than trying to be someone else that you're not. So, you can be a leader just as among anyone else is a leader, a real leader in a sense of inspiring, but somebody who you aspire. But do you try to be a leader? Do you think Mark Passio tries to be a leader? Do you think he tries to be philosophical? No, it's effortless for him because he has attained that knowledge and practiced it within his life. So everybody thinking they have to try to be a content creator or try to wake other people up. I'm sorry to tell you, but it's not actually how it works. You want to wake people up, you have to wake yourself up first and realize you cannot be stuck in that mindset of you need to do something. Because yeah, there's a moral obligation to save humanity, but that should come naturally, looking in the face of evil.
Yeah.
When you look at evil, your eyes should naturally divert from evil and be like, this is not something I want to be a part of. Right? But if and that should not be a forced reaction. Uh, it's not be something that requires tremendous amount of work. It's unfortunate because we conceive that it does, and I know this is ironic because everything I say is ironic, like shadow work being hard and painful. But that's naturally on the process. In order to face your shadow, you have to be able to let go into your feelings and feel them out and let them experience, not try to hide them away. So it's the
From
opposite,
from experience, shadow work is rather acceptance and reconciliation,
Mhm.
because you cannot get rid of this darkness.
Right.
It's there forever. So you have to deal with it. You have to reconcile with this part of yourself.
Yeah.
Knowing that you have it, now you can control it. You can use it if you need to. There's
Mhm.
presence, there's things, experience that happen in our lives. Some bad, some good, you know, some suffering, some joy, some love. There's a lot of different spectrum of emotions and sensation and feelings that we can live, and but these are really intimate. You cannot share them. Nobody can feel it like you feel it,
Yeah.
you know. No one thinking like you thinking. And that's what is beautiful about the human race, is this osmosis of like-minded people. And even people who you wouldn't agree, most of the time, you can still have this relation of empathy and care with different people. And
Yeah.
I think this is what shadow work is actually making for me, is this deeper understanding of this relationship with the others and myself, and what you can do with it, you know
Mhm.
because essentially what it brought me to, it brought me to the great work. It brought me to this work
Yeah,
because
same.
this is a it it liberated me. It gave me so much. It gave me back most of my power that I considered sleeping for all these years, or all these lies
Right.
that I was telling myself. And philosophy and the occult is a very good tool to start, at least start it.
Yes, it's a start. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Caught in the manifestations with desire, but past the manifestations. Because you see those books are always pointing to something higher, are
Yep.
they not? They're always pointing to something beyond the book, which is why I love those books, because they don't keep you trapped. I'm afraid there's a lot of people, like I don't like to attack Christians or the the biblical worldview, but because but I'm surrounded by them. Okay. I sometimes feel pressured. Okay. And I don't like that. Like they want to teach compassion and love, then why do they have all these strict rules and rituals? Why do they tell everybody that their book is the only way? Why did they go through? I mean, and then you look at the deist writings and you look at the East and you're like, these Christians don't even know this exists. And I go online and I see everywhere, God loves you, Jesus, and oh, God will save us. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, is he not part of you? Is he not part of nature? Is there no work on part of yourself that you have to work with nature? And like, because you are like, it doesn't make sense to me that these people are taking the words of some Hebrew. They don't even know if it's the correct translation. And, it was given by the church mainly. And then from there, you had a bunch of denominations. Like I said, the Catholic Church was the one who really made the Bible big. And yet there's so much value in like the feminine and the nothingness and the yin that I'm talking about, which, we typically look at God and Jesus as a male dominant figure telling the world we need to go on a crusade to save everybody and make everyone Christians. Same thing with the Muslims and other cultures. It's absurd. This is why there's that famous quote by an astronaut, a person who went up to space or whatever. It said, God is a woman and she's black." And Alan Watts did a whole hour on that on purpose because it helps people see past their religious mindset, the Christian mindset. It's really funny. Anybody should check that out. It's really telling, though. And so he's basically debunking the idea that, we perceive God in a certain way when obviously he's way beyond our conceptions. And so and he and she and these terms, and it's being able to really get back to that stillness and that simplicity, which is so beyond, it's more complex than anything that we can invent, anything that we can think of. And that fills us with mystery and awe. And so people say, well, the Bible is always teaching me something new every day, and there's always more to read and blah, blah, blah. It's like nature's teaching me. I can look at a tree and there's a billion lessons in how many poems have been written about a single tree. Like, oh my gosh. It's like you can learn so much, but people limit their own minds into what they think they should learn from. And then no wonder why they think that their reality is the only reality that should be interpreted, because they surround themselves, just like you said, with people who then also think like that. I'm so
It's
I
a
worry
trap.
about the Christians. Yeah, I worry about the Christians because they're good people, but it's they're going to draw people away, just as the people in any other community draw people away when they assume to be the truth. And that's why I think certain philosophies like Taoism and like Mark Passio's natural law community is going to grow because it's relatively more open to everything and seeing the bigger picture.
Yes.
Like apparently Mark Passio at his event, my friend told me that he has a sticker on his desk that says the anti-cult cult leader. And we were laughing about that because we're like, well, some people follow his work religiously, and then, he is, however, helping people escape the previous cults that they are in. So um, it's going to work like that. But I think coming down to a simplicity beyond words is the ultimatum. So I think that does go past, to some extent, Mark Passio's work, but he leads people there. And like, if you see the bulk of his material, and you really look into all
Yeah.
of it, you can really see that there's such a bigger picture that even he can't detail. And he's telling us that, he's telling us there's this truth, and it just is. And our perceptions are not the truth. If you hear that part of the presentation, every part then of the rest of that presentation, you understand is just his perception. So don't argue about it being true or not necessarily, because some people get so stuck and they say, well, his definition and that and this and that. Remember, you had Patrick Smith and Disenthrall talking about objective morality and how you can't do that, and you can't put rights in nature and all this. It gets very scientific and materialist, left brain.
Mhm.
It's like Mark Passio knows this about his own work. He's self-aware about it. I find this so significant. Everybody's in this community quite self-aware, and I think we're sometimes overthinking scenarios. So I have no beef or nothing really against anybody, but we're all in this together, and I do think that food forests will be a great solution as well. Like, just to bring up something completely new and different. You need
Yeah.
somebody to say, hey, let's go back to our roots, not just mentally and morally, but physically as well. Like, growing food and food forest is insane as a solution. I did a whole video on why that's important. People are interested. And I go into why it actually helps our morality and helps what we're doing with the One Great Work. But, Mark Pastor doesn't talk about that. So does that not make it part of the One Great Work? No, it doesn't matter. He's outside of the work. He's outside of this greater thing that was way before he even existed. He's really just bringing it to light.
I
So,
I had the chance to have the man on the LIBERcast, and it was a very awesome conversation we had together about spirituality and thing. And what I found invaluable in this work is it is grounded, and this is what connected me to it.
yeah.
uh, this is, yeah, sure, from time to time you're gonna stumble upon what some of this work that it's out of there, but I think the all the podcasts that we can listen, they're all interconnected together,
Yep.
and in the end you can see relatively a bigger pattern depending on how much care you put into the listening part of it and the understanding, because I think there's a lot of repeating, because I want to bring that because there's a lot of people who are taking in the information and they know it by heart, but essentially the understanding is absent
Yeah.
behind it, and it transpire through the work of these individuals. There's a very narrow a narrow array of exploration. It is very squared. This is a, and this is why I like to get over the stuff, and then if we I need to, it's to get through it, and with my experience, and maybe putting more an emphasis and make it closer to the people on the sense of the life of the everyday life and things like that, and giving them some context. But to end my comment, I would say that I found that Mark Bastio's work is invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
It is an incredible aggregate of information, and the thing that Mark Bastio says to people too is to get further with the information.
Right.
You cannot cover everything in deepness and deeper and deeper. So it's the responsibility of the people of for doing their own work and
Yeah.
exploring by themselves and making themselves a maybe becoming another magi,
Hmm.
and being able to vulgarize the information enough for most of the people, because we're an endful of people just like that.
Hmm.
And it's scary, brother.
Yeah.
The rational, it's not a la mode at all.
Yeah. Well,
Rationality is,
again,
is gone.
yes, because they also haven't given themselves equally as much as enough silence in their own mind. Again, these work hand in hand. When you have one imbalance on one end, you know you have an imbalance on the other end as well, right? You see, there's an egocentric dominant leadership in the world, and there's a bunch of order followers. They're
Yep.
both equally as imbalanced. So yes, you can say we are left brain dominant, yang dominant, but we're also yin dominant. It's just when and where, which is why, when I talk about Wu Wei and non action, it's about knowing when to take action. Most of the time, humans take action, they're taking action unnecessarily. And they're taking too much action that they end up hurting themselves or others in the process. And so it's about being intuitive rather than counterintuitive, working with nature rather than against it.
Yep.
So yeah, we can go on forever. This is actually called like spiritual alchemy or internal alchemy, which is also called Nidan in Taoism. So um,
Interesting.
been talked about for a long time because it's helping people get out of their mindset. Which is, by the way, why China in the 1970s and 60s burned and destroyed millions of Taoist temples, and not a lot of people talk about this, but they're an atheist government, and they don't want certain things. Now they recognize it after they burned everything. They're like, oh, we'll recognize there'll be three main religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, but they don't even. It's not even like 1% of the population. And obviously, they watch them. There's videos online talking about how the government watches Taoists and their movement to make sure it's not spreading. Like, I'm not kidding. I can show you those clips. And I'm like, this is it just shows you, right? When you have enough people who are thinking for themselves, it's just naturally a threat to people who want to be the only way.
Yep.
And so it's just naturally so. You don't have to put effort into being a rebel. You just naturally are a rebel. And that's what I want people to do, is just naturally be themselves. I talked about in my video, it says a better world requires you to do nothing. There were some people from Mark Passio's community who came in and said, well, what are you talking about? We have to create action. And they did not watch the video, because clearly toward the end, I say, and specifically as to all this stuff, I say you can be in the show and just want to be in the show, passive. We can be active and want to be the main star of the show and try to change everything. Or you can be the one who doesn't want to be in the show at all. That's the person that I'm referring to, the total non-compliant, the total rebel. They're not doing anything in the active sense, yet they're just being themselves. That's quite significant. So there is a place for doing nothing. There is a place for meditation. There is a place for spirituality. There is a place, just we've been led to be deceived in our own heads as to thinking that's the only thing we should do, or the opposite. We have to always create action. We have to always find work, and we have to make sure we're making money. We have to make sure we have a good job. We have to make sure we go to college. We have to
Mhm.
make sure that so many things, right? And so in the West, we're particularly very action oriented. In the East, you see there's a lot of slave like mindset. Just go with the way things are. So you can be able to decipher this and see the bigger picture. There's a reason why Lao Tzu left China. That requires principles. He didn't go with the flow, he didn't just escape reality in his own mind and meditate. He left because he has principles, and he said, I'm not going to do it. He said, no, the lost word. Okay, that takes courage, that takes effort. But yet, his main teaching is to do that which is not effortful, to follow the path of least resistance. Well, him leaving China was actually the path of least resistance, because he wouldn't be contributing to the tyranny and the chaos in the system. So, although you might say, well, it takes a lot of resistance to do shadow work, No, you're actually returning to a state of ease away from dis-ease,
Yep.
which by definition is simple and relaxing and good. But yet it seems complicated, it seems hard. That's only because of the world we created on top of that simplistic ease that is naturally there. So people are not going to understand Lao Tzu. That's why he said in his words, he says, few are going to comprehend the action of no action. He said that because he knew that that core factor of his teachings, of all the other teachings that he shared, that's the one thing that people are not going to understand the most is how to flow like water and take the form of anything and be able to have an inevitable death into the ocean. Being able to have hurdles and be able to flow past them with ease. He knew that would be the hardest thing for people to do because we are in a rigid mindset, mostly due to Confucianism that spread in the East and created all the governments that ended up killing Taoists, ironically enough, and the Christianity and the other Western ideals that also had the same mindset. That's just why Christianity is typically compared to Confucianism, because Confucius said, men are evil, we need to create laws. Taoists said, no, what are you talking about? Men are evil. That's why we shouldn't have them in power. So it's quite an amazing thing because
I
who's proven
understand
right?
why. I
Yes, they
understand why
understand.
you say you talk about abolitionism and Taoism.
Yeah, right. I know. I don't intend to. Did I intend to look into the abolitionist? Does anyone think that I intended to find out? Wait, these abolitionists are talking about other forms of slavery. It comes about because I am able to free my mind as I do through these practices of basically getting back to the uncarved block to still point my childlike self. The child is creative and imaginative and able to create things and see new things in their reality. We're missing that as adults. And I realize that I want to keep that part of me if I want to keep being creative and keep being myself, because otherwise I will be adulterated into an adult. I will be denatured into being somebody who everybody else wants me to be,
Yeah.
but I can still be intelligent and I can still act in ways that are, beneficial for society as I see fit, but I will still have fun because I'm still a child. How many adults forget about fun? Isn't that what life is about? Like, come on. I find this absurd.
The this is and seriously, I really respect your work, and I want to encourage all people to go to these. There's tap link there, and then the Liberator to newspaper, digital newspaper. I suggest you to go there and go explore this important work of philosophy and ideology and things like that. That it's very mind blowing. It's taking us out from this cube that we build for ourselves, and seeing over and beyond what we are permitted to see, and
Yes.
and
Thank you.
and I this is incredible. Every time you come on the LIBERcast, I learn a lot, and it's very inspiring to see your work that you're doing. You're posting videos, uh, like a lot, and I share them on the LIBERcast because the message needs to be heard.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't do this for any reason other than for the message you and I both share.
Yeah,
So we're both in it the same reasons. I'll share anything of yours at any time. So keep in
and
touch.
I mean it's an hour and 40 minutes in. I think we can let it rest for
Sure.
today.
Yes.
Um, so I want to thank everyone who joined in and the people who will listen it later. Thank you very much for
You,
being
you
there.
bet
And
I'm gonna clip this at the kazoo like I have been. Have you
yeah,
seen the shorts? They get like thousands of
sure,
views
sure, I
each.
see that. Yes,
Just
I,
saying.
I'm still struggling to know how to do it. I
I can
cannot.
show you. I can show you.
Awesome, thank you. I was like, oh my god, how do I do that? I It's not written anywhere. So it's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna do my own there. So thank you everyone for joining us to the LIBERcast, and thank you, Cory, for joining me once again and having awesome, deep conversation and listening to this great wisdom that you have, if I can use this word.
Yeah. You know, it's actually funny. The word natural law translates to Tai Chi, which is the martial art for Taoism. Supreme principle, underlying universal principle.
Yep,
Yep, it is.
it's all connected together.
So
There's
it
no
is.
separation.
Yeah. All right.
So
Thank you.
thank you again, and see you next time. I don't know if it's gonna be in French or in English, but see you next time, people. Bye.
Peace.